Paul McCartney, one of the most enduring figures in music history, has spent over 6 decades navigating the ebbs and flows of popular culture, leaving an indelible mark at every turn. As a Beatle, a solo artist, and a cultural icon, he has lived at the intersection of creativity, fame, and relentless public fascination.
All my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay.
It's a position that comes with its own unique set of questions, many trivial, some profound, and others simply unanswerable.
No, I don't think anyone tried to pin it on it. It just came out that way. That's a long story. But there was a meeting where John came in and said, hey guys.
Among these is the persistent quandary. If you could assemble a dream supergroup, who would make the cut? It's the kind of hypothetical that fuels late-night conversations and inspires endless debate. But for McCartney, the question carries a special significance. He's not just speculating. He's offering an insight from someone who's seen it all, played with the greats, and understood their genius firsthand. McCartney's supergroup, as revealed in a 2019 interview with a Brazilian newspaper, is less an exercise in ego than it is a carefully considered homage to those he admires most.
Beatles could exist until today?
Yeah, I think so, I think they would have got better and better, probably, but it was not to be.
His choices span decades and genres, drawing from his deep well of experience and his personal connections to music's most revered figures. And perhaps most notably, McCartney didn't include himself in the lineup. The decision is emblematic of his characteristic humility, a refusal to center himself even in a fantasy that could so easily accommodate him. He began naturally with the drums. For McCartney, there was no hesitation in naming John Bonham, the legendary Sticksman of Led Zeppelin. It was fantastic, McCartney said of Bonham's work with Wings on Beware My Love, a track that wasn't released until 2014. Bonham was always on my top 5 drummer list and a great friend and ballsy drummer. It's a fitting description of a musician who redefined what it meant to be a rock drummer. Bonham's playing wasn't just about power, though he had that in spades, but about an intuitive sense of rhythm and dynamics that could make even the most thunderous fills feel purposeful. He wasn't simply a drummer, he was a foundation, a force that held Zeppelin's sprawling compositions together while giving them an edge that no one else could replicate. For keyboards, McCartney's choice was Billy Preston, a musician whose contributions to the Beatles during their fractious later years are the stuff of legend.
Don't let me down.
Preston's arrival during the Let It Be sessions brought not only musical brilliance, but a much-needed injection of positivity into a tense and often acrimonious atmosphere. It's interesting to see how nicely people behave when you bring a guest in, George Harrison remarked in Anthology. Suddenly everybody's on their best behavior. That Preston's talent could cut through the egos and conflicts of the Beatles says as much about his character as it does about his musical skill. Whether playing with the Rolling Stones, Ray Charles, or on his own records, Preston's work on the keys was imbued with a soulful energy that could elevate any song. McCartney's choice here is not just a nod to Preston's technical ability, but to the rare and ineffable quality he brought to every performance. On bass, McCartney made the intriguing decision to step aside and let another giant of the instrument take his place, John Entwistle of The Who. Known as the Ox, Entwistle was a player who could turn the bass into a lead instrument without ever compromising its essential role in the rhythm section.
I found bass very boring. I wanted to turn it into a solo instrument. The only way to do that was to turn up the treble.
His lines weren't merely functional, they were melodic, intricate, and often jaw-droppingly virtuosic. It's a testament to McCartney's humility that he chose to hand over the reins of his own instrument, acknowledging that Entwistle's approach brought something entirely unique to the table. For fans of bass guitar, this choice alone would be worth the price of admission to McCartney's hypothetical band. When it came to guitar, there was really only one name McCartney could consider: Jimi Hendrix. Over the years, McCartney has spoken frequently and with great reverence about Hendrix, recounting stories that illustrate both the guitarist's genius and his deep respect for the Beatles. "He must have been so into it," McCartney said of the time Hendrix performed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band just 2 days after its release. "I put that down as one of the great honors of my career."
Yeah, it was at the Savile Theatre in London, and I was there, Clapton was there, Townsend was there. We like all come to see this new guitar god. And yeah, we'd released Sgt. Pepper on the Friday. 2 days later, on the Sunday, he'd learned it and he played it. And he played a great version of it.
Hendrix's performance wasn't just a technical marvel, it was an audacious act of homage that showed how deeply he connected with McCartney's work. In many ways, Hendrix was to the guitar what McCartney was to songwriting, a revolutionary, someone who expanded the possibilities of their craft in ways that seemed almost otherworldly. In McCartney's supergroup, Hendrix's presence is as inevitable as it is essential.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to get a point across before we, take our rest. I'm sorry, it's still on.
Finally, McCartney rounded out his lineup with a choice that felt as much about legacy as it did about raw talent. For the lead vocalist, he selected Elvis Presley. Immortal, McCartney called him, and it's hard to argue with that assessment.
You ain't nothing but...
Presley wasn't just the first true rock star. He was, in many ways, the archetype for everything that followed. His voice, a mixture of raw power and tender vulnerability,
My brain is flaming, I don't know which way to go. Yeah.
could convey an astonishing range of emotion, while his charisma turned even the simplest songs into cultural events. For McCartney, who has often spoken of his early admiration for Elvis, this choice feels deeply personal, a tribute to the artist who helped ignite his own passion for music.
Oh yeah, man, we used to do, when really young, you're influenced so much by it. And I saw Love Me Tender, his first film, and we were all so excited. We were sitting there, I think me and John, a couple of the guys, sitting there waiting for Elvis, but it was it was a film.
It's a story.
And you first saw him, he was in a field with a plough and a horse. And you go, yes, that's him. And then it kind of cut in on him, hey, wow, the cinema went wild.
It's tempting to imagine what this supergroup would sound like if it were somehow possible to bring these legends together. Bonham's thunderous drumming underpinning Entwistle's melodic bass lines, Preston's gospel-infused keyboard runs weaving through Hendrix's incendiary guitar solos, and above it all, Presley's voice soaring with a mix of grit and grace. It would be, in a word, overwhelming, a sensory overload of talent that could only exist in the realm of fantasy. But McCartney's choices also tell us something about the man himself. Each selection reflects not only an appreciation for technical skill, but a recognition of what makes music truly great, its ability to connect, to inspire, to transcend the boundaries of time and place. Bonham, Preston, Entwistle, Hendrix and Presley were all, in their own ways, boundary breakers, artists who didn't just play their instruments, but redefined them. And in choosing them, McCartney isn't just creating a supergroup, he's paying homage to the spirit of innovation and artistry that has defined his own career. Of course, it's impossible to ignore the sheer impossibility of such a band ever existing. The egos alone would be enough to sink most projects, to say nothing of the practical challenges of coordinating musicians who came from such different backgrounds and eras. But that's the beauty of a hypothetical like this. It doesn't have to be realistic. It's not about imagining the logistical nightmare of rehearsals or the inevitable squabbles over creative direction. It's about celebrating the joy of music, the kind of joy that comes from dreaming up the impossible and reveling in the wonder of what might have been. McCartney's supergroup isn't just a fantasy, it's a reflection of his own journey through music. It's a love letter to the artists who inspired him, the collaborators who challenged him, and the peers who reminded him that there's always more to learn. In assembling his lineup, McCartney isn't just looking outward, he's looking inward, tracing the threads that have shaped his own identity as an artist. And so, while this supergroup will never grace a stage or record an album, Its existence in McCartney's imagination, and now in ours, feels like a fitting tribute to the power of music itself. It's not about perfection or practicality. It's about possibility, about the simple, enduring joy of asking, what if?